has become a leadership oasis. There's no place else that a young Black engineer can get the kind of leadership training that you're bound to get by being a part of NSBE. Now, what makes a person a leader is not a title. What makes a person a leader is, will people follow that person? And Ed Barnette was one who people would follow. Just to give you an idea of his personality, Ed Barnette was, first of all, he was a big man, big man, okay? And he was a big talker. Ed Barnette talked more than a radio. He didn't talk necessarily about advice he was giving to you. He would talk about his personal plans. He was ambitious, extremely ambitious, but he was focused on a game plan. He always had a game plan. Ed Barnette had one other thing that was characteristic of champions. He wanted to be the best, and he wanted all of us to be the best. He used to talk about, to be the best, you must beat the best. Now, I think that Ed really was challenging himself and competing against himself more so than other people. I want to share with you a bit about the founding of our organization. Up to this point, most of what you've heard has been discussions about what happened at the NSBE conference, or just before the NSBE conference. But the history of this organization includes much more. The establishment of the Black Society of Engineers, done by Ed Barnette and Frederick Cooper and Arthur Bond. Then a couple of years later, the establishment of the Society of Black Engineers. The thing that's important for me to help people understand is that we were the first beneficiaries of a program focused on helping Blacks in engineering. There was no such thing at Purdue University before Ed started it. And before Ed started that, and before Arthur Bond started the minority engineering program, the dropout rate of freshman engineers was 80%. After they started, our freshman year, the Chicago Six, the retention rate was 80%. And all of the Chicago Six had B averages. So they had found the solution. As we developed our organization, we had an opportunity to install several committees, and that's where and how the work got done of building NSBE. One of those committees was the tutorial committee. Now you have academic excellence. Another of those committees was the projects committee. Now you have the conference planning committee. We had a publications committee. We had a resume committee. Those were the key committees that helped us to launch and grow our society at Purdue University. I'll just mention one other thing about the growth of our society at Purdue. We started with 28 students in 1971. By 1973, we had 80 students. In 1974, we had 104 students. By the late 70s, we were up to 268 students by 1976, and 304 students by 1978. So it was just a great opportunity, a great time of growth. And what I'd like to do now is give Ed Barnette an opportunity to talk about his view of what happened as he started the Society of Black Engineers at Purdue University.
Hello, I'm Edward Barnette. I'm currently the manager of corporate manufacturing staff at Digital Equipment Corporation. Sorry I couldn't be with you today. Any organization has a beginning. And by the way, congratulations on your first Founders Day. Your organization started in the fall of 1971. As an incoming senior, I realized we had some responsibility to the underclassmen in the engineering program. I talked with most of the black seniors about my ideas. How could we start an organization that would focus on the retention of blacks in engineering? I went to talk to Arthur Bond, who was then a PhD candidate in electrical engineering, about my ideas. He told me that the University of Michigan had already tried to start an organization like that. Matter of fact, he gave me a copy of their constitution to guide me. I sat down with Robert Milton, who was a senior in mechanical engineering, Richard Ray, who was a senior in industrial engineering, and William Granberry, who was also a senior in mechanical engineering, to talk about ideas for starting such an organization. We decided that we would first have a meeting with all the black engineering students to tell them of our intentions. We felt that we needed to have very simple and explicit goals. Those goals were black engineering retention. We were going to be doing some career counseling to the juniors, to the sophomores, and most importantly, the freshmen. And that we would try to recruit more people into the engineering program. We felt that these goals were not only simple, but they were obtainable. We call this group the Black Society of Engineers. Now, the name was changed by Tony Harris and George and Logan, and these guys who are sitting with you today could better explain to you, but it's my impression the name was changed to the Society of Black Engineers to be more in line with traditional engineering organizations on campus, such as the Society of Mechanical Engineers, Society of Industrial Engineers, etc. I was named the first president. Fred Cooper, who was a junior in electrical engineering, was named the vice president, and Cynthia Gunther, who is now Cynthia Milton, who was a freshman in electrical engineering, was elected to the secretarial position. We started by putting together study groups that were led by upperclassmen. We also donated file systems. I got a deal with the Triangle House, who donated the use of all of their files, which was extremely helpful. But I've got to mention that Robert Milton, I think, was a key person in really putting together the study groups. Through these efforts and efforts like these, the grade point average that was compared from the past years went up an entire point. So from one year to the other, I think the freshman class that Tony was a part of is the class in which the study was made. I felt we had enough data at this time to get the Black Society of Engineers recognized on campus, so we could take full advantage of all the school's facilities, like meeting rooms, like some of the stationery, etc. Myself and Fred Cooper went to see Dean Hancock, who at the time was the Dean of School of Engineering, to get his support for our organization. The initial meeting was a disaster. Matter of fact, he felt that he didn't really feel that we needed to have an organization that was split out from the main campus, that the organizations that were in place, like the Society of Mechanical Engineers, Society of Industrial Engineers, could better fit our needs. So we went away believing that we had to do a better job of presenting our position. So in a couple of weeks, Fred Cooper and I, we went back. This time we had a charter, We had a constitution, and we also had Arthur Bond as our faculty advisor. Dean Hancock, at this point, he agreed to support the organization. So our organization now had a firm footing on Purdue's campus. Subsequent presidents of the BSC were Fred Cooper in 72 to 73, Joe Abram in 73 to 74, and of course Tony Harris in 74 and 75, which, along with the people that you have sitting before you now, were part of the group that took Society of Black Engineers national. Now I'm going to close now, but I absolutely feel that the idea of having an annual Founders Day sort of helps make sure and ensure that this organization has a firm footing and history that can be replayed in years to come. Thank you very much. And
what a privilege it is to hear about NSBE's founding from Edward Barnette himself. As the video was playing, I was made aware that we have some additional NSBE royalty in our presence this afternoon. And one of those people being another Chicago 6 member, Ed Coleman. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or this evening. If you want to say a few words, you're welcome to. I definitely wanted to acknowledge you and give you that opportunity as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. George does a very good job of speaking about the history, and I will allow him to be the primary spokesperson. But if he forgets something, I'll be sure to fill in.
Awesome. And then also, I recently made contact with Angela Barnette Marshall and Camille Barnette Flowers. And Camille is on with us this evening as well. So I wanted to acknowledge you as well. Thank you for joining us this evening.
So, Ebony,
yes.
First of all, I think it's fantastic that you had Ed on board. We often talk about NSBE being a family. One thing that I think people should know is that we were a family from the beginning. There are some of us who were in first grade together. Ed Coleman and I were in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade together. 5 out of the Chicago 6 went to the same high school, and we were best friends for 4 years. So our 5th year of together was the freshman year of college, and it was like the 5th year of high school.
Wow, that's awesome. And I'll just make one more comment before we transition into the next part of our program this afternoon. Is that when I made initial contact with George was so very open about teaching me about the founding of NSBE. He didn't take any offense to what I knew or didn't know. So as all of you are learning about the founding of NSBE, so have I, as I've read the articles that George has sent me, and then also made contact and hopefully establishing some preliminary relationships with the panelists that we have today. So I've enjoyed this process and preparing for this myself.
Well, I definitely just wanted to say that I do thank you all for honoring my father. I was very young when he passed, so I am still learning so many things about him. And as I've gotten older and now entering into my 40s and soon may outlive my father, it is a beautiful thing to see that his name is still alive and that there's so many great things that are coming from his death and his legacy. And I just want to continue to be a part of it as much as I can. So I do thank you for including me.
Awesome. I'm glad you could join us.
So great to see you, Camille.
It's good to see you too.
He would have bragged about you a lot.
So I've heard. I wear him every day. This is actually his chain because, you know, he wore a lot of gold. But I wear his chain and his picture every day. So
Love it.
That's awesome. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and transition into our Q&A fireside chat portion of the evening. And I'd like to introduce each of our panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Jerry Burris, President, CEO, and member of the Board of Directors at Mohawk Industries. He's a senior executive with over 30 years of leadership experience. He earned his bachelor's from Purdue and later an MBA from Northwestern University. Jerry, can you tell us a little bit about how you know Ed Barnette Jr., affectionately known as Big Ed?
So first and foremost, I just want to pay homage to the founders, founder Ed Barnette, Arthur Bond, founders Coleman, A. Harris, B. Harris, Pertley, Logan, and Smith. Because without you gentlemen, this esteemed organization wouldn't be in existence, and I certainly wouldn't have the opportunities that have afforded themselves to me over my career. I first met Ed Barnette. What we have in common, in addition to Purdue Engineering, is Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and specifically Purdue's chapter, which is known as New Chapter. And so as a pledgee or scroller, I met Big Brother Ed Barnette. And he had an interesting way about himself. What I later learned was that he had a hand in selecting the 9 individuals that I crossed with on my line, 8, including myself. And I'll say this, and I think this speaks volume about Big Ed, as we affectionately referred to him in our fraternity and many people on the campus of Purdue University. He left a legacy. And his legacy, just with my line, is one of many examples, is 9 of us have our master's degrees. And that was important to Big Ed. While I was online, he pulled us all to the side and he had a fireside chat with us. And he turned to the 4 of us who we were all STEM majors, 8 engineering majors and 1 out of Krannert. He happened to be a finance major out of Krannert. So we all had tough majors. And he turned to the 4 of us who were engineering majors, electrical engineering majors, and said, hey, I work at DEC, and I want you 4 to take EE 365. I want you to really get involved with microprocessing programming. Well, that would be equivalent to today, as I meet young people, I tell them, do you know how to code? You should learn how to code. You should learn how to develop apps. And from that tip and the focus in directing me into what, my graduating class was the first to be the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering, was an internship with IBM. And then a permanent corporate training program job with General Electric Company. And I give Big Ed, or Big Brother Ed Barnette, or Ed Barnette, a lot of credit for taking time. As he would come to campus, he wasn't looking to necessarily be that alum who wanted people, look at me. I mean, founder George Smith talked about his presence. He was bigger than life. I mean, he commanded the attention of the room, not just because of his physical size, but how he carried himself and his interests in what you do and where you're from and what your career aspirations were. And he told us all, look, your parents sent you here to get an education. You know, you're here, perhaps some of you through MEP program, perhaps some of you even through some of the NSBE outreach. You were recruited. We want to retain you. We want you to matriculate through Purdue. And then we want you to go on and get those jobs. I mean, that's why you came here. Kappa Alpha Psi is just going to help kind of complement that, but that's not why you're here. So he helped to set, I think, grounding and focus around why we were there. And, you know, I guess I can look back and, you know, really be proud about he had a hand in selecting the 9 of us and what we're able to do today as 59, 60, 61-year-olds.
Thank you. That's awesome. And I can just imagine how impactful that was when he pulled you all aside and challenged you to not just finish your pledge process and become brothers of an organization, but make sure that you took advantage of your college time and had a plan for what your career would be afterwards. So that's awesome. Next, we have Dr. Keith Clinkscales. He is the Director of Strategic Planning and Performance Management, Palm Beach County, Florida. His area of expertise is in strategic leadership, change and performance management, and continuous process improvement. Dr. Clinkscales shares a fraternal bond with Jerry Burris and Ed Barnette as a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. How do you know Big Ed, Dr. Keith?
Well, good evening, everyone. Well, it is a pleasure. I'm overwhelmed, actually. I might be the youngest guy on the panel because I'm 60 years old, and I went to Boston University and from 80 to 84. Now, in 84, you got to understand what Ed Barnette did. He totally transformed Digital Equipment Corporation, because in 84, I went to the NSBE conference and I walked away with 3 offers from Digital Equipment Corporation, 3 different locations. And that is totally attributed to Ed Barnette and his influence in Digital Equipment Corporation once he got there. We do have a fraternal bond. So when I first saw him, this was my first job in engineering at Digital Equipment Corporation. And Richard White, you remember, Richard is also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. But when I saw Ed, I'll be honest with you, I was scared of the guy. The guy is huge. I'm 6'2". I'm 6'2" and a half. The guy is huge. He's 6'5", and Angela was tall.
Yes,
Angela was a tall woman.
Yes.
She was like a beauty queen. And my wife and I both graduated from engineering at BU, and we both got jobs at Digital Equipment Corporation. That's the amount of influence this guy had. Now, when I got to Digital, everybody was talking about Ed Barnette. And he was like an icon already in Digital. And there's a couple things that I would ask, you would take away from Ed Barnette. He was one, his presence demanded influence. I mean, his excellence and his presence actually created influence. And he used that influence to bring on more and more engineers. Digital was the place to be. And I don't know if you guys remember, but from like 80, 81, 82, 83, everybody wanted to work with Digital. And that's because of the amount of command. He worked with Ralph Gillespie and these the plant managers of Springfield to get more Black engineers in there. And the fact that I was a fraternity brother, I was a new engineer. This is my first job. And so Allison and I, my wife, we met Ed and Angela. I was very intimidated by him. I am not going to lie. Because one, he was a big brother, he was a founder, and he was huge. He was tall. But him and Angela invited Alice and I over for dinner, and the rest is history. I shaped my career after following the looking and following this guy's commitment. And one thing I will say about if anybody wants to mimic what I saw in Ed Barnette is being unapologetically 100% real. He was authentic. You could sit down and have a conversation with him and feel like your big brother's in the room, or that he was intentional about pouring into people, pouring into young engineers. And you don't see a whole lot of that. Today you see a lot of folks, they get in their career, they got theirs, and they're moving all the way up and they're not taking the time to be intentional about, hey, young engineer, come here, sit down, come in my office. Let's talk a little bit about what your career aspirations are. What's your five-year plan? What have you? That's what I got from Ed Barnette. It was just a phenomenal experience. He was larger than life. And Camille, you had just a phenomenal mother and father. And they were, my Allison and I, we just looked up to them.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. We all need those mentors and people in the workplace that push us a little bit, ask us what's going on, what do you want to do next, to keep us being progressive in our careers. It's nice to know that Big Ed was that for you. Next, for our panel, we have Mr. Jerry Lee Perkins. He is the Director of Operations at Frugal Meister Nerds Incorporated. He also attended Purdue University and has extensive volunteer experience and certifications from University of Kentucky and MIT. Jerry, how do you know Big Ed? Did we lose him? Okay, maybe we'll come back. All right. Our next panelist is Mr. James White, a retired information technology sales director and computer sales engineer. Also, a graduate of Purdue University with a bachelor's in electrical engineering. And as you can see, he's very involved in his community as well. Fun fact, James White and Jerry Lee Perkins were roommates in college. And again, something else I learned about relationships and community as we were preparing and getting to know one another for this evening, you could see the partnership in the two of them coordinating and getting organized for this evening. So it's just happy to see that community and that relationship they established in college transitioned and still remains the same today. And with that, James, can you tell us a little bit about how you know Big Ed?
Sure. Thank you, Ebony. I appreciate that. A little hoarse, so I'll try to make it brief. But I almost have to echo everything that Dr. Keith said, because our relationship was similar. The only difference is the fact that I wasn't a noob and I was not in school while Ed Barnette was in school. I did not learn about Ed Barnette until I had graduated. Until he had left Purdue. But what I did was I would go to a lot of the different functions, recruitings, national conferences, and I would always run into Ed, always. And he would always pull me to the side and give me very, very valuable experience. And, sometimes brothers can recognize other brothers' personalities. And, he was always the type of brother that said, be sure that you stay on focus. You got to stay on point with what you're doing. Maintain your composure at all times. I remember one time, this is actually when I was working for him now, at DEC. I remember he said one time, the number one thing that you're going to have to do is make sure that you're competent in every single thing that you do, because you like to hold your head high, you like to carry the torch, you like to be loud, you like to be seen and heard, and that's all good. That's all good. We absolutely have to represent ourselves. The only thing he said is be competent. And he said that so many times throughout the conversation that it just stuck with me. That stuck with me. It still sticks with me today. And, you know, sometimes I think about what he said when I see engineers or different types of people in meetings, and they're not really competent, or at least they did not do their homework. They did not do their research, that they would do the necessary presentation correctly. So that's one thing that I always want to do, is I want to make sure that my information is accurate and that I have done my research. And I think that alone was probably a key constituent that Ed gave me at a very early age that propagated through my career, because as everyone knows, Deck went through a series of migrations and integrations, transitions, and I never had to interview. You know, they were always selecting me to move on to the next role, and I contribute all of that to Ed Barnette. The other thing that I contributed to Ed Barnette was, he said, because, you know, sometimes we have a tendency, we as, you know, Black men, we as Black engineers on this call, or several, we have a tendency to try to tell people how smart we are. And I'm going to tell you, I have been guilty of that all my life. I can't wait to get in front of people so I can show you guys how smart I am. And he already knew that was part of my personality. And he said, you know, when you get into, you know, the workforce and you start dealing with different managers, you have to be able to manage your manager. You absolutely have to be able to press the right buttons of your manager and don't press the wrong buttons. It's just like a wife, right? I mean, I don't want to press any of my wife's wrong buttons. I want to make sure that I press all the right buttons. And Lord knows I'm going to try to keep her happy. And if my job is done, then her job is done. And, you know, it's like, what's the saying? Happy life, happy wife. I got that from Ed a long time ago, and I wasn't even married. It was later in life that I got married. But I am absolutely sure that those two constituents were very, very integral in my success, because I never say never. I didn't want to always show people how smart I am. Yeah, sure, I'm smart, but I didn't want to show it all the time. And I always made my managers look good. I knew exactly what their measurement criteria was, and I made sure that they were successful, and then they would help me to be successful. So I owe Ed for those two very, very valuable lessons.
Thank you for sharing that. And I agree. Yeah, to make sure you are competent with whenever you have the opportunity to get in front of folks. So that's definitely something, you know, I believe, and also will kind of make sure I check that box whenever I need to get out in front.
Yep.
And last but definitely never least, we have Mr. Richard White. Many of you may know Richard, especially those within the NSBE organization that are with us today. He's currently the Region 2 Professionals Programs Chair. And you probably already know that Richard has extensive NSBE leadership experience. When I was looking over his resume, I was just hard pressed to find a role that he had not had, and that is awesome. So to me, that shows that NSBE is his passion through and through. Mr. White, along with the current professionals chair, Russell Marzette, who's on with us this afternoon, actually launched the Edward E. Barnette Junior Scholarship Program that we're here talking about in 2016. So I am excited to have Richard as a part of this panel and this discussion as well. Good evening to you, sir. And how do you know Ed Barnette?
I actually, my first co-op position as a NSBE member, a NSBE leader at that time, was working for Edward Barnett's wife, Angela Barnette, and not to really know the to what Dr. Clinkscale had alluded to in terms of the influence Edward had in the digital ecosystem as it relates to minority hiring and just creating a ecosystem of a minority atmosphere. His vision was just, amazing. And the fact that I had to be to work on time. I mean, the first day of my first intern, I interned 2 summers with Mrs. Barnette, Angela, and my first day of my first, he was there. He was there before I got there, and it didn't really connect to me in terms of that Edward Barnette was my boss's husband, and he came over. He did exactly what everyone else has said. He gave me a few nuggets. He kind of set forth the vision of my internship as an NSBE member, as an NSBE leader, but more than anything, setting the expectations in terms of me actually being an intern under in Angela's organization. So it was that really impressed me. That really had such an impression on me. It shaped how I viewed myself, how I needed to be more focused. It changed so much. I mean, they were like surrogate parents to me in a way. As Edward knew more about me than I knew about myself. I would have to honestly say that. And so that kind of catapulted me in terms of the relationship. As you know, if those you don't know, Digital Equipment Corporation was first or second BCA member of the society. All the equipment that was donated for NSBE and the membership system, all that was digital equipment, which was again influenced by Edward Barnett's just vision and influence with the executive leadership team and everything. And I just became a part of that vision. And I think a lot of us were a part of that vision in the beginning of NSBE, throughout NSBE, and continuing today. And I think that is why the scholarship was designed to be unique, to be a reflection on how Edward Barnette would want people to be awarded for their hard work, for their focus, you know what I mean, and for their commitment of giving back, and because that's what he always did. And those are the things that were impressed me the most about him. I don't want to repeat the other things that have been said earlier, but I mean, it was a change. Those 2 summers was a changing moment in my life, and that's all that's all. I really just want to share that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe Mr. Perkins may be back on with us. So I want to give you an opportunity to share how Ed Barnette.
I'm trying to get him the code right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
Give us a minute.
Okay. No problem. We've got a few other questions that we can talk about, and I'll definitely make sure that I circle back to Jerry Perkins. We heard a lot about some of the mentorship that Ed Barnette provided our panelists, but I think I want to go just a little bit deeper, maybe talk about some additional specific moments that were teachable moments that a few of you had with Ed Barnette. Founder George Smith, how about we start with you? George, if you can hear me, you're on mute.
Okay, how about now? Okay, so thank you, Ebony. First thing I want to say about teachable moments is that Ed Barnette was consistent. He was always the same way. Everything you've heard about him as a professional was the same when he was a student. So he was consistent and he was persistent. Now, from a consistency standpoint, what I'm really talking about is his commitment to the Purdue chapter. Ed Barnette went to work for Procter & Gamble, Cargill, Ford, DEC, but he always came back to Purdue. And this is why he was able to meet Jerry Perkins and why he was able to meet James White and a slew of other people from Purdue University. But we had the opportunity early in his career, while he was still at Procter & Gamble, to invite him back to the Society of Black Engineers before we became the National Society of Black Engineers. And needless to say, it was the most heavily attended meeting that we had. And Ed Barnette was a great speaker, and he had the ability to connect and engage with everyone in the audience. So I actually have, from our historical records, I have the outline from Ed Barnett's speech that he gave that day. And this was in 1974. And I'll just share with you the 4 points that were part of his speech. His belief was that you had to have a positive attitude toward your job and fellow workers. That's number 1. Number 2, you had to have the ability to communicate. And number 3 was the importance of high goals. Number 4 was the determination to excel. And if you just think about putting that quadrant of skills together, that will take you a long way. And I would like some of our DEC representatives to help us, give us a feel of how high Ed Barnette rose in the organization. We're getting this sense that he was a senior executive. He was, in fact, a senior executive. My belief from the research that I've done is he was just a stone's throw away from having his name in the DEC annual report. It's my impression that's right. Is how high he was in the organization.
That's right.
That's right. Ken Jackman knew. Digital equipment again. The Snowdens. We're the founder, Mr. Olson. But Ken Jackman was a black VP. But under him, he was Edward Barnette, and he was one step away from being, an actual VP. As some of us know, back in the 80s, certain companies had VPs, but in Digital Equipment Corporation, you actually had a stakeholder leadership role as an executive, and he had that role, and Jackman had that role. Yes, absolutely.
So it's my belief that Ed Barnette was on a CEO trajectory.
Yes, it was.
What a shame that we lost him when we did.
Yeah. Good afternoon. This is Angela. How are you all doing?
Very good, Angela.
Well,
What's up, boss? What's up, boss?
Such a heartwarming evening. I want to thank all of you. I just want and Ebony, tell me if I'm throwing you off your track, because I'm always conscious of time. As Richard always.
No, you are just fine.
Richard already indicated, I'm conscious of time, but
Yes, she is.
Everybody. But you all have just shared just some of the most heartwarming
Angela's talking as soon as
memories of Edward. And, I talk about it from time to time, of course, with Camille and family members or what have you, but this has just been such a love fest that I really appreciate it. But to your question, George, he was in the company of John Sims, Ron Payne. These are people, blacks, that had already made it to the VP level. That was definitely his next step because he reported to VP. As a matter of fact, his last position in Massachusetts was the account manager to Ford. He actually represented Digital Equipment Corporation to Ford Corporation. So he spent more time in Detroit than he did in Massachusetts. But he was definitely on that trajectory, and I couldn't see him any other place than that. I mean, he was not only just a born leader, he was a born educator. Everywhere he went, he was educating. And I do want to share this with you all because it's not something I've shared a lot or had the opportunity to. To his dying day, he was teaching and motivating. The nurses at the hospital were evidently in some type of contract dispute, and there was a lot of kind of negative energy on the floor, and he would actually guide them into more constructive conversation and strategies about how to address their issue. And they would say to themselves, he's right, we can't do this. And it was just amazing to watch a man who was, he actually was evident of his mortality. To still spend those last few days, weeks, still educating people on how to advance themselves, how to be better workers, better employees, how to achieve the goals that they were setting for themselves. It was just a wonderful thing to see. And it really just kind of brought home to me, this is who he is. This was what he was put on this earth to do. It wasn't even just about engineering. It was about advancing people around him to do the best that they could do in whatever it is they set their minds to. So he was, VP, CEO, yes. None of that, I expected it. I put it that way. But at NSBE was his heart. NSBE was his heart. So he was very, very proud of the organization. We had to be involved, whether I wanted to or not. I had to go to a national convention. But we also went to NAACP, AXO competitions. I mean, he was just involved with anything that uplifted the community and people who were just trying to advance themselves. So I thank you again for this evening, for this this wonderful tribute to him in the context of the beginning of NSBE. Richard, great seeing you again. Hopefully you're on time now. Okay.
Yes.
George, great seeing you. Jerry, how you doing? How you doing? Okay. And Keith, nice to see Dr. Klingscale. Nice to see you again. And Jerry, I spoke to a couple of nights ago. I know he's coming on now. Ebony, you're gonna have to put the timer on him, okay? On Jerry.
Yes,
okay?
ma'am.
You all have a great
You want to try it?
rest of the evening. And please,
Yeah.
Ebony, keep me involved. George, keep me involved. I want to do everything I can to help promote the scholarships, because this is what this is all about. And with the cost of education being what it is today, which is absolutely absurd, it's more important than ever.
Yes.
So I thank you for this effort and for this evening.
Awesome.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, Angela.
All,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Angela. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so very, very much. James White, give me the signal whenever Jerry Perkins is able to get back on with us, and I'll pull him into the conversation.
Let's try it now. For some reason, he can't get a signal out there, but he's on my cell phone. So if he starts talking, we can just decide whether or not people can hear him or not.
Okay.
I know all these engineers on the phone, we can't figure out how to. Perk, you want to try talking?
Yeah, let me try right now.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. They said they can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. When I first started hearing the first couple of conversations, I'll be honest, I was just overwhelmed. And I'll tell you what I was more overwhelmed with. It just reminded me of the love that Diz showed me that first time I met him at the Black Cultural Center at Purdue, the day before my freshman year. I met him, and what was ironic about the whole thing is the things we had in common. One thing was we both played center on our high school football team. In the state of Indiana, there was only 2 all-black high schools. The one he went to was Gary Roosevelt, and the one I went to was Christmas Addicts. But one of the things that I often say about Ed was the time that he spent with me in those very early days when I used to describe it as there was nothing in his self-interest to help me, but he just showed a genuine love to make sure that because we were going to be in the same engineering major, that I got what I needed to get through that process. And then even more so, once I got my career on track and started talking to him about Procter & Gamble and his experiences there and did the PhD experience. And then when Ed went to DEC and convinced me to come and interview, when at the time I told him I had no interest in leaving P&G because I was a 24-year-old engineering manager there. So why would I ever leave? And after going to visit and that experience that weekend, he actually said, bring Michelle and Jacola, which was our daughter. And after that experience that weekend, I was convinced I was leaving. And I came to DEC. And the love that Angela and Ed showed myself and my family was just unbelievable. Because that's exactly how I felt the whole time I interfaced with those 2 guys. Was just, I felt like I was a part of their family. I felt like the love they showed my wife and my daughter. And I remember Ed saying to me, just focus on the work. Don't worry about anything else. Just focus on the work. And I'll tell you, that made a tremendous difference in my career, because by just focusing on the work, everything else took care of itself. And I was able to become the plant engineering manager, I want to say 2 or 3 years after Ed had been plant engineering manager, kind of thing. And that was because he cleared the pathway and he allowed me to focus on the work. And when we talk about leadership, clearly one of the best leaders I ever worked with, and I always felt like I was working with him because he always made you feel like you were part of what was going on. You were a critical part of what was going on, and that he wanted to do well, but he wanted to see other people that looked like him do well too. And I just saw how he emphasized that one, especially when he was in the Springfield plant. He wanted to see everyone do well, and he did things to cause that to happen. So I was just so happy when I was first approached by Ebony to be a part of this. I mean, I felt overwhelmed by the opportunity to be a part of this. Because again, the love that that family has shown myself and my family, I would just love to just give a little love back, a little love back.
Thank you so much, Jerry. And thank you for accepting our invitation. And again, I owe founder George, a lot for helping me establish these connections and relationships. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I just wanted to say one more thing before I go. It's bedtime. But I just wanted to show you all how Edward Barnette's legacy does live on. And this is his granddaughter. Hello. And you will be actually surprised to know that her favorite subjects are math and science, which obviously skips a generation. But I was very good at math. I just didn't really like it. But I am a business major, of course. But I do have the gift of gab. I am in sales. I'm very successful in sales. But a lot of people, of course, tell me all the time. I think, Mr. Smith, you've told me several times, and I hear it everywhere I go, that a lot of people say that I am Edward Barnette, which I heard could be good or bad.
His degree was industrial engineering, and
yes,
that's business. And you definitely have that aura, that presence about you. And so, yes, there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
I get the beauty from my mom. But yes, I mean, I love hearing, of course, like I said, I just, any chance I get that I can hear about my dad. I don't know if a lot of you know, but the first time I ever heard my dad's voice was that NSBE video, and it was sent to me from Mr. Smith a few years ago. So kind of choked me up a little bit, but, we do look alike. So I do like hearing as much history as I can. I have so many things. I have a shrine to my dad in my house, and I have a lot of memories, but unfortunately, being that he has passed so many years ago, I don't know if you guys know this, but his birthday is tomorrow. So, yeah, so it's amazing that this is actually happening, and I truly do enjoy and love hearing as much history about him as I can learn, because it helps me understand why I am the way I am, who I am, and why I talk so much, and why I'm so good at it.
And how you continue to be. I mean, clearly, I just want to just make this impression, because I was so close to Edward, and again, it was John Sims, not I got the names mixed up. So it was actually John Sims. So Edward was really running the business of people in DEC. It was like he knew every person. He engaged every person. He had the ability to talk on anyone's level. And clearly, considering your success, you definitely go along that same way. And so there is no thing that jumped, right? You're through him, and you're going to be through his granddaughter. So just continue the legacy. Great things will come, no doubt, no doubt.
I know that I disappointed many by not going to Purdue, but I did go to Howard. So, and from what I understand, I think my dad would have picked that as a first choice. So, but yeah, as much as I can be active, I'm not an engineer. I was raised by a female engineer. If you know what that means, then you know what that means.
Yes.
I was raised to be a perfectionist. Education is very important to me, and it will always be. So I just love hearing from all of you, and it was really nice. I really enjoyed this. I truly do.
My grandson wants to go to Howard too.
It's a great school.
It's the only school. Ain't you?
You know.
Whenever I mention it, I say the elite Howard University.
Yes.
Carry on, Camille.
It's different now. School business, we do carry the school, so.
That's true.
Yes.
That is true.
Yes, it's a great choice. But thank you again for this. I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So throughout a lot of the discussion that we've had here, we've talked, we learned about how big Ed impacted his peers in college, mentored young engineers in their careers, and just went above and beyond to impact each one of you on a personal level. When I think about that and some of the mentors I've had, and then also learning about the impact that he's had on each one of you, I do think that really is the definition of positive impact to an entire community and in a diversity of ways. So as George, as you think about the Community Impact Scholarship and founding of NSBE, why is it important that we continue Ed Barnette's legacy of giving through this scholarship? George, I think you are on mute again.
Thank you again, Ebony. I think that Ed Barnette's legacy is his will to win. Ed Barnette had, I would say, the strongest willpower that I've seen in an individual. And I want to reflect on the timing of Ed Barnette's education. He was at Purdue University during the heat of the civil rights movement. He was there before the doors started to open up. So he had the willpower to make it through that sifter where 80% plus of Black freshmen engineering were not making it into their sophomore year. But if Ed were here today, he would tell us that we must continue to rise. There was no relaxing for Ed Barnette. He was always reaching for the next plateau, the next hill to climb. And I think that if Ed were here today, he would advise us to design solutions for the problems of our time. Some of the problems are still problems, the same problems that we've had in the past. But we have got to reach parity in underserved communities. So I think that's the challenge that he would give us. Our NSBE mission is to increase the number. Well, increase the number to what? Ed Barnette would have a specific goal. And I don't think there's any goal that he would accept other than reaching parity. And the other thing that's characteristic about Ed Barnette is he always had a game plan. He wasn't just a dreamer, he had a game plan. And I think he would tell us to examine the pipeline. And he would challenge us to find the bottlenecks in the pipeline. And I think it would be very clear to him that the biggest bottleneck in the pipeline is the lack of proficiency of our young students, grade 3 through 8 in mathematics. So, in general, I think Ed Barnette is remembered as someone who was great. I think he was always striving for greatness. And he was not someone who was going to wait to be great. If Ed Barnette had waited, then the Society of Black Engineers would not have started in 1971. And so because of that, we should not wait to support the Ed Barnette Scholarship.
Thank you, Founder Smith, for those inspiring words. I think you hit on something that is truly very, very important. That proficiency in math of grades 3 through 8 and striving for greatness. I think the kids these days love video games, but the math behind the video games is what we really need to increase the interest in. So thank you for speaking some of the thoughts that I had, and I know many of those that are on the call share those same types of thoughts. So, as we close out the Q&A portion of our time together this evening, I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that we are coming up on NSBE's 50th anniversary, 50 years of NSBE. We know that one of our biggest charges via the NSBE mission, in addition to what Founder George mentioned with increasing the number, is to also positively impact our community. As we reflect on everything that has been said today and the words of one of our founders here, this is just a question I would like for everyone on our panel here to have the opportunity to answer this. Where do you believe Big Ed would say we still need to work and focus on? Founder George Smith already shared his thoughts, but I would like to bring in Founder Ed Coleman into the conversation and then roll into our other panelists. So, Mr. Coleman, if you're on the line, please feel free to share.
Yes, I am on the line, and I think it goes back to some of the things that were said earlier today about Ed Barnette's work ethic and how that might be reflected in NSBE today, or might not be reflected in NSBE today. and that is to be focused, keep your eye on the ball, and make sure. George indicated that Ed was a stickler for having specific goals. Make sure that you know what the goals are, that they're communicated, and everybody agrees to those goals, and the entire organization strive toward achieving those goals. The Black community of the United States and even beyond the borders of the U.S. Can benefit from having people take a look at the opportunities that exist in engineering and STEM related fields. A lot of folks don't do that. A lot of youngsters have no idea what an engineer really is right now. So they all need to be informed and educated in terms of what those opportunities are for them and why those opportunities are for them. And so absolutely, I think all that is a lot of the stuff that Ed Barnette would have preached, and it needs to be a focus. And I guess I'm just kind of stating the obvious, but that's my view.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being willing to jump into the conversation with us this afternoon. Dr. Keith Klingsales, what would you say Big Ed would want us to focus on?
So what I really believe that Big Ed would want us to focus on is this duality of purpose. When I say duality of purpose, what I see in Ed was excellence will yield your influence. He was all about making sure that you show up right and you're excellent and you do good work. If you do that, then that will create influence. But then take the influence and actually impart into somebody. Make sure that you are reaching down and giving back. And not only that, Ed had a way of collaborating. He wasn't an island. I mean, at Digital, there was John Sims and Ron Payne and Ralph Gillespie. And we don't do that enough in terms of locking arms with each other and using our influence to make things happen. I'll give you a clear example. Ed would want us to use the power of NSBE to make things happen. For instance, everybody has seen this thing going on with Twitter. You know what? And if we don't like it, what if all the Black engineers in NSBE said, we're not going for it? Now, I'm just using that as an example. But let's take a cause in something and say, you know what, as Black engineers in this organization with over this amount of professional and student engineers, this is our stance on this. He would want us to make a stance on certain things, using our excellence. We're all great engineers to create influence.
Thank you. Mr. James White, what about you?
I had to go blow my nose. I kind of got a little sinus infection, a little hoarse, so I apologize. But nothing was going to keep me away. So unfortunately, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, we were talking about what do you believe Big Ed would say we would still need to focus on?
We or him?
Yes. We.
He would.
Yes.
He would say that we need to focus. We just need to focus. So we need to focus on being focused, because a lot of times, I'll speak for myself. When I was a younger Black engineer, I was ADD. I had a lot of stuff going on. I loved to run around all the time and have fun. And people like Ed would kind of reel you in and tell you that there's always time for all of that. So put that on the back shelf and focus on the issues at hand. So if there are issues at hand that need to be addressed, he would make sure that we're addressing those issues.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Mr. Richard White, what about you? What do you think Big Ed would say we still need to focus on?
Ed was a visionary. He was a leader. He was a collaborator. You know exactly what he knows how to build a team as clearly as we know from the Springfield plan. he would say, we're moving on to NSBE 50. We have benefited from the society. We need to be focused about mentoring and giving back and building a leadership team within our society so our society can be more influential in moving the needle. And when we say needle, we really mean impacting the community. And he will probably stand up. Sometimes if he will probably be standing up and really giving that look like 50 years, and we're not where we should be. You know, our membership should be great. Our leaders in our organization should be great. We should be impacting. We should be known in every household. We should be able to raise enough money, charge our BCAs to ensure that they support the pipeline financially so any student who has interest in math. And he would say, we should have a tutoring system that is a national base. He would be setting those types of goals. And he would be on point right now just before our 50th.
Okay. Thank you for that charge within the NSBE organization. So some of you guys have hit on community, career within the NSBE organization. Jerry, I think Mr. Jerry Burris, so that we don't get it confused. What do you think we should do with all this? If you could share what you think Big Ed would say we need to work on and focus on, but then also like, what do we do with all this information, all this motivation, all this inspiration? You're on mute. There you go.
All right. Thank you. So first of all, Mr. Burris is my father. So I'm Jerry, or Jerry B, so we don't get me confused with Jerry Perkins. But in my mind, if Big Ed were here today, I think he'd say, if you can see it, you can be it, and you can achieve it. And what I mean by that, if you think about Big Ed, and if I think about Big Ed, I hit Purdue's yard in the fall of 1981. NSBE was only 6 years old at that time, but it was everything to me. It was that village that helped me matriculate through Purdue. Purdue was a very isolating environment. I have a love-hate relationship. I love it in many respects because of what it's allowed me to achieve just by the association and the degree that I hold. And I'm appreciative of Purdue. It honored me in 2017 out of the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering as an Engineer of the Year. But as I was accepting that award, it made me reflect on when I hit the yard in the fall of 1981, there were roughly 1,200 students on Purdue's, African-American students on Purdue's campus out of 32,000. I have two nieces who are at Purdue now. They're both, one's a rising junior, the other's a rising senior. And there are 1,200 students, African-American students on Purdue's campus, but in total of 42,000. So part of what I would challenge all of us to do here is make that, if you can see it, if they can see it, if they can see you. Big Ed had a presence when he walked into the room. He commanded attention, not because he was self-centered and he was looking for the attention to be directed to himself, but because he was selfless and he was looking for, how can I ensure that there's continuity of us on this campus and that we continue to matriculate. So I guess you could say I probably didn't rise to the level of being a president and CEO of a company, or even a board member of a S&P 500 corporation. I didn't know those careers were possible, but it was people like Ed Barnette and Mike Shin and Dr. Samuel Massey, who their sheer presence of being involved with NSBE, with Purdue's Industrial Advisory Board, made it possible for me to dream. Now, Ed didn't say this one, but I like to use this one. And it's by Reginald Lewis, who was the founder of Beatrice and the first Black billionaire, if you will, or run $1 billion corporation. And he would always say, the dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately. And I think Ed would tell us, he would challenge us, get your hustle on. And what that means, I wish I could have said this in the beginning because we lost a few people. I had some folks who were texting me, and I still sent them the link to give. This was as much about us giving and imparting knowledge, and I quite frankly got a lot out of it as a guy who's 59 years old. I got a lot from just being a part of this august group right here. However, to whom much is given, much is required, and we've got to give. So here, I'm gonna do the heavy lifting now, and I practice what I preach. So I gave at the platinum level, I gave $1,000, and what I discovered is that NSBE makes it easy for your companies to give. So every board I serve, they have giving, they have matching. So I've been matched twice. And then the chairman of the board of the company who I sit on also gave. So my 1,000 has been matched not once, not twice, but 3 times. So my giving is at the level of 4,000. It needs to be more because NSBE has given me so much that I couldn't even begin to pay it back for what it did in establishing that village on Purdue's campus that didn't make it seem so isolating to me to be one of 1,200 African-American students on a campus of 32,000, to feel like I wasn't so isolated when I heard about my white counterparts having a tutorial by the professor, because he was a member, named the fraternity, but it wasn't mine. And having NSBE to help me through, as Ed mentioned in his video, those course files. Those were so important that we share and we pass that on. So that's what I would say is now is the time, call to action for us to not only be seen, be heard, but take action and give monetarily as well as of our time. And I've got to do more of that. And I really appreciate you inviting me to participate on this video, virtual fireside chat, and giving me an opportunity to give back in a small way. I can never repay NSBE for what it did for me, but I'm going to start. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry B, as you had told me to call you.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to run because I had another commitment tonight that I was working around. But I'd like to match that pledge of $1,000, and I would like to pledge. My wife and I would like to pledge $1,000.
Thank you so much.
We can just talk about the logistics of how it's going to work at some point, but that's what we're going to do.
Yes, we'll do. So with that, we have added. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing we're going to do, I've already started family and friends soliciting them to contribute to, because the goal of $50,000, I think Ed would say, let's not sell ourselves short. One of the things we learned at Procter & Gamble is we have what we call RBC goals, realistic but challenging. And I'd like to challenge us. I'd like to challenge us as a team. So let's double that original goal of 50,000 to 100,000. and say by the end of the next calendar year that we've got $100,000 and that we have some type of financial process that's in place that we can develop a strategy that the whole, at some point, and I don't know when, at some point, we can fund this by just replenishing the principal to a point where we could do something pretty significant just off the interest, and figure out how long will it take us to do that, and what do we need to do to make that happen? Because I think that's part of what I want to call wealth management. I think we got to figure out how to manage this wealth in such a way that it takes care of itself, and that we're not out beating the bushes every year trying to, come up with $50,000. And I understand it's not necessarily a today thing, but we got to figure out how short of a time frame can we make it happen, and just do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. On behalf of.
I'm gonna have to run. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Like I
yes.
said,
Thank you. We accept the charge. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Hey, James, I'm gonna talk to you later tonight when I get out of this meeting.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Jordan. Hey, all you guys, even the folks that I don't necessarily know, thank you so much. Just the love that you're showing in. Because I tell you, I love him like he loved me, like a member of his family. I just appreciate it. Here, Camille, I hadn't seen her since she was like, I want to say 2 or 3 years old. She stayed with us once. Because Ed is our middle daughter, Ed and Angela are our middle daughter's godparents. So it's just special. Hey, take care, and I'll be talking to you guys.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
Yep. So I appreciate Jerry's charge for us to extend our goal to $100,000, and highlighting. I just want to highlight and let everyone know that this scholarship is the first of its type within NSBE. It is an endowed scholarship, and what Jerry is talking about is exactly where we want to go with this. So, I mentioned early on, our goal is minimally $50,000 with $25,000 allocated to scholarships we want to give this year, but then the other $25,000 going in the endowment. And I believe Angela mentioned earlier that the costs of college tuition are rising astronomically. So in the future, it would be our responsibility to see if we can give out either more scholarships or at a higher amount. And I know with your help, we can meet and exceed the goals that we've set for us this year. In the chat, I have put the link to allow each one of you to give, as well as provided a text to give option. So make sure that you take a look at that. We are also planning to have a Giving Tuesday campaign. So that is something that you will see advertisements coming out in LinkedIn and the other social media venues. The other thing that's key that we highlighted in the very beginning of the scholarship is that this scholarship is nominations based by the professionals, chapters, and chapter leaders. The link to the nomination page is on its way to being finalized. In the interim, I would like to encourage all of you to email me, and I will get you that link as soon as it is finalized. I can be reached at pebawards@nsbe.com. And yep, there's the slide there with my contact information. I hope that the discussion this evening has inspired you to mentor, to nominate a deserving student, and donate to continue the legacy of Edward E. Barnette Jr. and to fulfill the NSBE mission. The NSBE mission is to increase the number of culturally responsible Black engineers who excel academically, succeed professionally, and positively impact the community. we thank you all for joining us tonight and have a very good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well
Thank
done,
you.
Ebony.
Thank
Very
you.
well done.
Gentlemen.
Very well done.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.